Ladies. This is, by the way, my pleasure to be back at Hawk eCom Week. I joined last year, and it's just so great to be back because jumping into this conversation around female entrepreneurship, I literally took a second. I was like, what does female entrepreneurship mean? What does this mean as a difference from male entrepreneurship? There's so much to really unpack here. And then I spent some time listening to your podcast. So for everyone listening in, we're going to unpack a lot, covering a number of topics: society, biology, success, failure, fundraising. So since we've all, you've been all introduced, I'd love to actually go around and have everyone just tell a bit about your stories too, and just even what you're most proud of. And if we can start with you, Shelley, too, we'll go around and then we'll jump in if that works.
Well, okay, let's skip the biology because that doesn't sound like much fun. I'm Shelley Zalis, the CEO of the Female Quotient, and otherwise known as the Chief Troublemaker. So well known to break all the rules that make no sense, create the new ones, and make shit up. I mean, I think that's really what an entrepreneur is all about, is not doing what everyone else has done, but really creating something that doesn't exist and figuring it out along the way. And that really is what my journey has really been about. I've done everything that's not in a textbook because my career has really zigged and zagged along the way. I've gone from the business of market research to now the business of equality, and not really knowing what that was. But I am the only female CEO, Fortune, top 25. So I started in market research. I'm the pioneer of online research. So if any of you have ever taken a survey on the internet, sorry, not sorry, but I am the mother of that invention, and really created that, and then realized that it was time to really be in the business of equality and help women break that glass ceiling and create a new one, and help Fortune 500 create the new rules so that all women could succeed and thrive in the business world. And that's really what my whole journey is about today.
What a legend. Now, every time I don't think I realized the survey component of it. So I'll definitely be thinking of you next time I get a ping. I'm the first to click. Tracy Tudor, I would love to hear, you have such an incredible background as well. So I would love to hear your story.
Hi, guys. My name is Tracy Tudor. I am the CEO of my own little company where I manage a small team of real estate professionals, not only in California, but now we are international as well. I started in Los Angeles as an actor. I did not want to be in real estate, and it was a happy accident because I failed at acting, and then cut to many years later, at the age of 42, I landed on a TV show about real estate. So it has been a little bit of a curvy, twisty-turvy sort of situation for me. But at the same time, I think that discovery is what's made it so exciting. And that's why I love talking about it. And I love, obviously, being the only female on a male-dominated TV show called $1 Billion Listing. It's been a journey into female entrepreneurship, supporting women in business, and obviously breaking the glass ceiling as far as salaries go for entrepreneurs that are women.
So awesome. And Tracy Holland, last but not least.
Hi, friends. What a fun morning. What incredible way to spend a Friday. So thank you for including me. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I think that sounds glamorous, but as a kid who was sent to reform school when I was 13, 14, 15 by my parents because I didn't follow the rules, they were trying to get me to be, the right student with the right grades at the right school, and both PhD parents, and realizing that part of my magic was in questioning the status quo, which led me to becoming an entrepreneur. My first entrepreneurial venture was with Fenton Nail Polish. I used my Columbia student loans to underwrite the IP. We built that business over 2.5 years, sold it to a big conglomerate. And I ended up not getting a dime, but left with all the debt because I didn't structure my deal correctly, and realized that how you structure a deal and how you go into a business relationship is really mission critical. 11 years ago, I founded HatchBeauty Brands with a business partner. I've built that over 11 years. And I think cumulatively we've done about $700 million. I don't know exactly what that is. I did the first 500 million with no investor capital and really good terms with the bank and really good relationships with my retailers. And what I realized in that 10 years, I had 3 children and I was building this business, and I recognized the fact that I kept trading as my currency for success was joy. And so I'd wake up in the morning, burning white hot, wondering how to get all 3 kids fed. I'm supposed to be married to a guy that I'm in love with and want to have sex with, which I didn't, and was not happy. And recognizing that everything we've been told as women, where we can have it all be all these things and burn white hot and still find joy, is actually not exactly true. And so how do you recalibrate your values to wake up every morning and do snow angels in your bed? Because there is no there. And there's no amount of money and no amount of Instagram posts or whatever it may be that brings joy. So this last 2 years, I founded Potential to Powerhouse, which is a podcast and now a digital platform for women to have transparent conversations around what it means to feel joy and experience happiness and be transparent and vulnerable on the path, because it is not, there's no there. So how do we share with one another with the intention of uplifting and sharing and providing contacts and network and information to inspire, uplift, and support us on the journey so that we can feel more fulfilled. And that's been my last 2 years and the most fun part of my life so far.
I have to jump in just 1 second and just say, this is what this is all about. Yes. Women supporting other women. And Tracy Holland, I just have to give a big hug to you right now, because your vulnerability, your authenticity, your truth of what you just said is what everyone tuning in right now, I mean, you just gave me shivers. And just for all of us, Tracy Tudor, Tracy Holland, all of us right now have to say thank you for what you just did, because it is a journey. Mm-hmm. And when we all have each other that can talk about these things, you know, it doesn't matter the success that we all have and what we've all done, it is hard. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's sharing that vulnerability and that truth, mm-hmm. that what we go through, when we can all talk about it like this and have each other's back and give each other the love, the help, the support, the truth like you just did. I just want to say thank you, and you go, girl. And we appreciate you and are grateful for you. So just thank you.
Thank you. I had a feeling this conversation would be exactly this. And it's amazing to have heard that. Just coming off that, I sit at dinners nightly with incredible women. I know we all do, where they're talking about these pain points. And so when I mentioned biology briefly, like, you hit one of those pieces on the head. Women contemplating whether they should shut down their business because the stress on their body and they want to have children. That's a real situation, right? Should I want to build my business? Do I just freeze my eggs now? And maybe I, put off my relationship. These are some of the issues that come into, it's about fundraising, but men and women have to fundraise, right? Men and women have to hire, men and women have to set culture, but there are certain nuances that are unique to being female that are coming up in every one of these conversations. That being said, I'd love to define the nuance of female entrepreneurship, because I think that there's a lot of male listeners and female too, right? But for us to just set the tone, like what it really looks like for you and what that nuance really means. And maybe Tracy Holland, since you were just touching on that, I mean, I'd love for you to just further define that in your words.
I think we have a superpower as women, which is an intuitive sixth sense. And I think it's a gift that I have tried to squelch my first 20 years in business, because I thought I need to be more male to be successful. So I went in very headstrong. I think of the Venice Beach muscle lifters. my head was huge and my heart was constricted. And every time I would get intuitive sense, I would override it with my head that said, this doesn't make sense. You need to be more logical. And I would even go as far as dressing, I would say more masculine, so that I could be taken seriously and not sexualized in a board meeting or in a room, especially in raising capital. And learning how to manage being female, and then transitioning over the last 5 years into embracing my femininity, embracing my female energy, recognizing that as women, the thing that we have as an advantage over all men truly is this intuitive connectivity, heartfelt ability to have this second brain, which is the first brain, is your heart. If you allow that gift to come inward and turn in terms of your intuitive sense, and then go to your brain and then go out, if you change the cycle of the energetics, it's when I became most in flow, most successful, have made the most money, have had the most joy. And it is when I'm out on a date and say, you're not my guy, I think I'm going to head out. Thank you so much. It's been 5 minutes and I'm out. I like this has been a whole transformation for me. And so I think as women, I say in my articles when I'm interviewed, I say we need to forget that we're female and not put that as a barrier, because in my experience, it is a superpower if you think about it in a different sort of way.
It's awesome. I mean, you talked about masculine and feminine energy. This immediately brings me to a Boss Babe podcast where Tracy Tudor talks about just this. Can we talk about that a bit more and just even share some of the pieces that you covered in that podcast for those listeners here?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with a lot of masculine energy. I was around contractors. My dad is like a gruff Armenian, first generation American, with a father that, was just really, really tough. And I was always taught to walk in the room and have that masculine energy. So when you said that, Tracy, it really resonated with me, because only since I got a divorce and sort of had to re-embrace life in my 40s as a woman and sort of redefine what that looks like for me, did I say, like, why do I have to be that? In order for me to be successful in a boardroom or in a listing pitch or in an interview, why do I have to tone myself down in that way or head towards that masculine energy? Because the truth is, where they're really thrown is when you walk in the room with feminine energy, confident feminine energy that, can be interpreted in so many different ways. But you touched on something that I talk a little bit about in the podcast as well with Boss Babe. And that's that sort of that intuition, that gut that we have that I don't think our counterparts necessarily do. And that, our intuition. And anytime we sit in a room with other women, it's like we all are sitting here staring at each other right now going, because we all have that innately. And for so many years, it like was whispering, and now it's just out, because I really don't have that zipper on my mouth anymore that sort of hides my intuition and doesn't let it come out. Because 9 times out of 10, when I've trusted it, and only in the last 4, 5, 6 years have I begun to use it all the time, have I been, that 1 out of 10 times have I been wrong. And I feel as if a lot of women are scared of that energy still. And I think that's, only we hold ourselves back in that arena, because if all of us use that feminine energy when we walk into a boardroom or a business meeting or even just a date, and we utilize that, what we have, to our advantage, then it really is nothing that can stop us. Because, for so many decades, forget decades, hundreds of years, we've been the nurturer. We've been, stay at home while the man goes out and hunts and gathers. And now those things are all shifting. And that's why, we're doing panels like this and talking about it all the time, which is, I think, incredibly helpful to more women, to women, so that they can have that voice and learn how to use it more often. And I just think that most of the time, up until literally my 40s and becoming single and having to recreate my life again, did I recognize that that energy and that instinct was always feminine. I just was taught in order to win, I had to be more masculine. I had to be boss, and I had to be, grounded in that arena. And now I kind of have gone, I think because of social media and because I am on a TV show, I have gone a little bit on to the other side of things. I dress sexier than I have in the past. And the reason that I do that is because I want women to see that you can wear a sexy dress that makes you feel confident and a pair of stilettos and walk into a boardroom and be just as intelligent as the man sitting next to you and win that room over. And that's something that I think so many women don't want to acknowledge, because still, I think we can be our biggest critics. And that's, I think, part of the discussion that I think more and more we need to be having, because we can't hold ourselves back that way. It can't be a double standard. You can't have feminism and then not allow a woman to feel sexy or feel like a woman, because she should be able to be all those things.
Oh my God, I love everything that you're saying. And again, like, I think this can happen throughout, just chill. I had a story where I went into a restaurant on a dinner I organized with other clients, and I got told to sit at the wives' table while my clients, who were male, which, by the way, I had a boyfriend with me who barely knew everyone, was directed to sit with my clients. This happened within the last 6 months, mind you. So this tells me that, like, and it reminded me, and it brought me back to that feeling of marginalization, which we talk about with Asians, we talk about with Blacks, but I was like, wow, that's how that feels. That hasn't happened to me in so long. And it reminded me also too, right? Like, when there's something wrong, I knew that was off behavior. And so this makes me think of gender equality, which we can't talk about one without the other. And Shelley, you talk about this a lot. So I'd love to just hear, where we are, State of the Union. We've had Me Too movement even happen, right? We've had all these things happen. Where were we like 20 years ago, and where are we going? What do we have to look forward to here on the elevation and equality conversation?
Yeah, I just first of all, I'm so inspired by Tracy, and it's the whole female quotient was really born. And I always say first came IQ, the intelligence quotient, then came EQ, the emotional quotient, now comes FQ, the female quotient. When you add more women to any equation, there's a return on equality, period, exclamation point. And I think that when you think about gender equality, the rules of the workplace were written over 100 years ago by men for men, when women just weren't in the workplace. And I'm turning 60 in March. So when I was in the workplace, there were no women in the workplace, very few. And I'm sitting here listening to Tracy tell her story. And I am sitting here thinking about when I was 24 years old, a really long time ago. And Tracy Holland was talking about this. I wore a suit. It was a skirt suit, but moving like this, and my hair in a bun, and didn't wear makeup, and trying to look really, not feminine at all. And I got invited to go to this meeting in a restaurant to meet this woman named Penelope Queen. And she was head of the research department. And I thought, okay, I'm not supposed to look sexy, and I'm supposed to look really unattractive. And so I went in to go meet her, and I'm like, I'm Shelley Zalis, here to meet Penelope Queen. And I said, oh, right this way. And I go to meet her, and all of a sudden I see this va-va-va-voom woman with long brown hair in a purple leather suit with a tiny little skirt and a tight little jacket, zipped down in a Tracy Tudor kind of outfit. And I'm like, what the hell? And it was this moment of reckoning where in that moment, I take my hair out of the bun, I flip my hair out, and I'm like, okay then. And it was my moment that I decide I'm gonna be a feminine woman in business, and who the hell did I think I was supposed to be? And the perception was not the reality. And that was my moment of truth, where I decided I am going to be who I am. And my second moment of truth, where I was told after I sold my company for $80 million, and I'm this like badass CEO, and I'm once again, in a boys club, which I was used to. I'm sitting at a table and I'm talking about, why they're putting my people in the wrong place, and tears are coming down my eyes. And I'm already accepted as like a badass CEO. And I'm told after this meeting that there's no room for emotion in the boardroom. And I come out of the meeting and I'm like, two options: agree with them, or now who the hell cares? And I've said, either agree or do what I did, speak to 1,000 people publicly. And what was my speech called? Bring emotion to the boardroom. What's gender equality? To stop letting things be what they were and flip the goddamn script and start owning it and rewrite the rules. Why? The greatest qualities of leaders today have empathy, compassion, passion. That are the greatest qualities, not the masculine, aggression, linear, decisive, but emotion, compassion, passion, empathy. But if they are the invisible qualities that we never talk about, they are going to be the rules from 100 years ago. So what is gender equality? Gender equality is making the invisible visible, talking about what qualities of leaders are today, which is the caregiving qualities. And yet we are losing our greatest leaders to caregiving because we are not creating the rules of the workplace to ensure that our greatest leaders thrive in the workplace. So the only way that we will change the game is not allowing the she session to win, but to allow the she recovery to happen, which is to truly get the leadership today to understand what it'll take to put caregivers back into the workplace and to create the new rules of the road that will allow the caregivers, which are still by default women, to work, because we are losing our best leaders to caregiving. So if Fortune 500 want to retain leadership, we need to do the right thing, or we will be seeing more women opt out to becoming entrepreneurs, which is what's happening, which is a great thing too. Right. So that's what gender equality is. We are starting to see progress. We have gone backwards a little bit with the pandemic. But if we do the right thing with consciousness, which we are working on, we will see forward progress. But equal is equal, not little progression and little steps forward. We need to close the door of inequity, open the new one of equality, and move forward.
So it's interesting that you hit a point which around the future of work, and the future of work is about empathy. They say leaders are going to be more like therapists than what you might think of as boss or manager, right? There's a difference between leader and manager. And you actually, Shelley, I read somewhere along the path of my Shelley research, right? This work-life balance concept and redefining that in the workplace. And I saw another during the pandemic, actually while sitting in Rome, funny enough, I read this LinkedIn post, and it was a male entrepreneur talking about how he was letting go of the need to grip on what time everyone was on Zoom. Are they logged in? People have different workflows. We're, working from home, and a lot of people are incredibly productive. So there is this massive shift around what does leadership really mean, and what does that look like in that shift towards maybe more, let's define it, feminine energy, but really just leading with heart and leading with love and leading with human and empathy, right? And then the other part of it is this new world of how we define the workplace and the way that women need to, participate in the workplace, even given the responsibilities. So I'm curious from, whoever wants to jump in on this is totally open, but as entrepreneurs, we have this role and responsibility and ability to drive what that really looks like in your company and set that as a new way of being and a new culture that even if those people don't stay and continue working with you, they're bringing that culture somewhere else, right? That's the new expectation. So, you know, I guess the where I'd love to get your perspective is like, how can we take on that leadership and push that into, you know, the cultures that we as leaders are defining? And what does that really look like? I mean, Tracy Holland, maybe if you want to jump in, or Tracy Tudor, whoever.
I'll say one thing.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there's something that Italy does quite well, and it's enjoying their lives a little bit more. And I think it starts and sort of ends with how you define success. And I think historically in our country, it's been defined by any sort of monetary advancement, right? So I think you have to really look at how you define success personally. And I talk about that a lot as well, because I think it's important that as a leader to particularly young women coming into my industry, there are no hours. We work nonstop. You know, we get phone calls at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, because that's just the way the industry is run. And it's very, very easy to burn out that way. And, you know, when you're burnt out, you don't produce. And there's a few companies that are obviously doing it better than others, and that are at the forefront of this. But I think most importantly, we have to nurture the people that are working with us. They're not working for us. They're working alongside of us, and they should be able to enjoy their families. They should be able to take vacations. I mean, if you don't take in Europe 6 weeks a summer off to sort of rejuvenate, you're crazy. And you know, I took 10, not even 10 days, and I feel like I've been gone a century. And there's something wrong with that. So I just wanted to mention that. But I think it's how we define that and sort of shift the focus from productivity and times and getting up at, you know, everybody has their own productive nature, but, you know, working 16-hour days is not something that is going to be able to last or survive. And you might be able to build something and sell it. And then what? You know, what's the takeaway there? Did you enjoy your life? Did you leave a legacy behind? So I just wanted to mention that.
Yes, 5Fs is something that existed in my family: friends, faith, fitness, friends, and finance. Those are and if you can actually expand it, because finance is the easiest to measure, whereas friends, family, faiths, you know, fitness even, it's more difficult to track, and therefore it falls back. But I love that you said that. So love that you said that. And actually, since we raised the F on finance, I think let's talk. The conversation on fundraising really is where I wanted to jump into, because sometimes and especially now, has gotten very difficult, right? And for women especially, it's been difficult. And Tracy Holland, you and I DM'd even on this. So I wanted to make sure we hit this, because sometimes it is the funding that allows you to have the bandwidth to be able to create all the infrastructure that allows that trickle down for the right cultural management to really be there, right? Because you're not coming from a place of scarcity. So I wanted to just bring that up and to get your perspective on what you're seeing in the marketplace with your founders who are trying to fundraise, and you know, any tips that you have for women who are trying to navigate that right now, especially given the climate shift due to the pandemic.
I have a couple of thoughts. One is, as women, you know, we have to lead by example. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they're driven by some motivator. And I believe my motivator to become an entrepreneur initially was fear. I was driven by fear of failure, fear of not being considered successful in my family, fear of not being able to provide for myself. And so I had to double down, as I thought, on how much time, like if it was 8-hour day, I was in 15-hour day mode, because the fear of not being successful was my driver. And what I would say is the learning that I have from that is that on the other side of that, which is joy and peace, the trade that is so significant in terms of your health, your mental health, your well-being, how you show up as a mother, how you show up as a friend, as a lover, as a participant in life. Life can fly by with a task and a to-do list, and all of a sudden a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years has gone by. You missed the kids' first Christmas pageant or their first steps, and the, you know, and so I would say my first conversation with any female entrepreneur would be, why are you doing this? What is your why? When you wake up in the morning, are you doing this to avoid something, or are you doing this because you're truly finding joy and fulfillment from it? And then let's go from there to how to get you to the other side of how to find your path to doing what you want to do. If it is being an entrepreneur, let's figure out a way to get you there in a way that feels nourishing and balanced. Because raising capital, the big secret no one wants to talk about, is that capital structures come with term sheets that are extremely onerous and very hard driving. And so when you think about a typical private equity investor, they're looking for a 5-time return. And they're almost worse than that because they have a percentage of interest they charge on their money plus wanting a 5-time return. So really understanding, by signing that term sheet, are you giving away a company you've already built value in? So if you have a revenue producing company and you're making 5, 10, 15 million in revenue, and you think by bringing a private equity investor, you can get to 100 million in revenue faster because you have more working capital, I would really, really pressure test these belt and suspenders that you are signing on your deal that can take your company from you, or take your daily activity in that business, or the things that may bring you joy out of the equation. Because that is a very important conversation versus organic growth, self-funding growth, bringing in angel investors. There's someone who I really admire. Her name is Jennifer Zuccarini. She founded Florida Mall. If you look at her cap table, she has one of the most impressive cap tables out there. Tory Burch, Lyndon Lee, you know, like the who's who of New York and Hollywood. And you know how she raised her capital? She went around to each person, had a personal conversation, had them write a check from their personal account. Now she has 25 people on her cap table. They're all the biggest names of people who I think are so impressive, but she doesn't have the same pressures that traditional working capital comes with, which is extremely onerous and frankly the hidden, not very often discussed until, but you can read about all these women, you know, in the news who have been founders of businesses who are no longer part of their company, who are in this kind of front-facing role but no longer active day to day, and replaced by a team of traditionally men. So the question is, what is the trade-off? Why are you wanting to be an entrepreneur? What is it that brings you joy? And then how do we get you there in a smart and successful way that keeps you in the driver's seat of your life?
Great advice.
Such good advice. They say, I read this quote that sometimes people chase things that they thought that were going to make them happy, thinking it would make them happy, right? And so sometimes you don't have that clarity, which is what drives, you know, which maybe drove you. We have those learnings. So it's never for nothing. But is there anything that you might recommend to somebody who's looking at a couple different paths, who's in that moment of asking questions, and they might have their inside voice so quiet and so deep down there that it's hard to even raise it, and they're convincing themselves that they want all these things, right? Because it's what they're reading, it's what's being celebrated. They're carrying the same pressures that you had, right? So, you know, what do you tell to that woman to help hopefully like bring that up so that you're coming from a place of alignment versus fear and scarcity?
I mean, potential to powerhouse is the genesis of that, is this conversation. And the root of this is, how do we bring forward to women entrepreneurs transparency, vulnerability, and connection so that we can have an open conversation and a network of women to pick up the phone and have a dialogue with, that have been women who have been there and done that, and who will say, I got to the other side of it, and guess what? This is not what you think it is. Doing 100 million a year versus 50 million, and I get to own my own business and run it and wake up and do the things that I love. There's a big payoff there for me personally. It's kind of the question and the conversation and the transparency is, to me, the root of this. And that's was the origination of the podcast, Potential to Powerhouse, and will continue to be the digital platform and the conversations we have for that purpose.
On the topic of purpose, like this, Shelley, I'd love to hear from you. I mean, you're doing something that's so mission driven and so powerful. I mean, everyone here is, so yeah, we have to acknowledge that. But like, what was that defining moment where you said, like, I know I'm in true alignment and I'm going down this path and I'm going to birth it into, you know, because entrepreneurship is a tough path, as we all know, and you know, and it can be very lonely, and there's a ton of sacrifices. So defining moment that got you here, I'd love to hear about that.
I just wanted to give back with generosity what I wish I had rising the ranks. I was lonely. I was lonely at the top, and I never had a network of women supporting me. And at this stage of my life, I wanted to leave a legacy of change. And now I have a network of over 50,000 women around the world that I can say I've never felt so proud that I have a network of girlfriends across 100 countries, that if you say you're part of the FQ community, whether you've met them in person or not, they are all supporting each other in India, in Saudi Arabia, in Pakistan, in Kenya, and they will give each other a hug virtually. They will say yes, and then they'll say, what can I do for you? And I wish I had that. And now this next generation of women coming up the ranks will always have a network, and they will pay it forward, and they will have a new way of working, and they will not be lonely ever again, and women will support women. And I know that that is how they will be operating. And that makes me feel amazing. And I always say, when purpose meets passion, you're unstoppable. And that is the truth. And so for me, there is no turning back. And just for Tracy Holland, I have a no regret policy. I will never look back and say, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I think forward and say, well, I feel bad about something. And if the answer is yes, I won't do it. And I always, thank God, I thought about that early in my career. And I was that woman. I needed $1 million to start my company. My father and my husband wanted to give it to me. And had I have taken it, I thought to myself, I never would have made aggressive decisions. I wouldn't have taken chances because I would have been too afraid to take risks, because everyone told me I was wrong, you know, when I wanted to pioneer online research. It was too ahead of itself. And so I took $1 million from someone and gave them 80% of my company, you know, but it was the right thing at the time, whatever. Had I thought of taking a bank loan, it would have been a good idea, but who knows? Shoulda, woulda, coulda. You know, anyways, I want to give time to everyone else because there's only 2 minutes left.
Yeah,
but that's why
there's so much we could cover. I'd love to go through a speed round, and these are all good ones, and you can just jump in. What would you be doing if money was no object? Tracy Tudor.
What Shelley's doing.
Fabulous. If someone gave you $5 million today, what would you do with it, Tracy Holland?
Everything I'm doing right now, and I would ask for the term sheet, and I would want to know all of the implications of the 5 million in case I don't want the 5 million. That's what I would do.
Great points. Good tactical points. What advice would you give to your younger self, Shelley?
What advice would I give to my younger self? I love what Sarah Jessica Parker says. Trying to be a man is a waste of a woman.
There you go. Who's your lady inspiration and why, Tracy Tudor?
Well, many, but really, truly, the two women that I'm on this panel with are massive. I mean, you know, you meet new people every single day, and every day I'm inspired by new women, but sitting across from the two of you feels like an out-of-body experience right now. It's an honor. It's special.
By the way, I'd love to actually extend that question to both Shelley and Tracy too, as well. If there's anyone out there. And actually, I'd love to pull it out of this panel because we know these women are incredible, but out there in the world, even if it, you know, dead or alive, who's that beacon? Tracy Holland?
For me, it's Oprah. And I think it's because I think she is who she is and is most vulnerable and open about her story and the abuse in her family and her household and her drive and fear that drove her into being who she is, and the cracking open of her heart to share with the world when she doesn't have to, but she continues to show up over and over again and be who she is, really inspires me.
Shelley?
Women in sports, I mean, Megan Rapinoe, don't settle for anything less than equal. Simone Biles, changed the Olympics forever.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, so many, I mean, women in sports are transforming, you know, standing up for themselves and standing up for all of us, I think.
I'm so glad you said that, because to me that captures everything we just talked about. Count what matters, take care of yourself. If you're not doing that, how can you be successful for yourself and for everyone else? So I love that you brought that. Is there any final words that you'd like to share with our listeners here? Tracy Holland?
Trust your gut. If your gut says run, run. If it says stop, stop. There's no there. There's only here, this moment, right now, this second, today. If your gut says go, go. Follow your gut.
Tracy Tudor?
I would say the fear that we all live with sort of every single day that we wake up with, it's always going to be there. You can't get rid of it. Remind yourself every single day that you need to put it to the side and do what you are intended to do. Put all of that bullshit away and get up and push yourself into the room that you want to be in.
And Shelley?
Know your value. Follow your heart. Confidence is beautiful. And always hang out with Tracy Tudor and Tracy Holland.
All right, we are cute. Ladies, you are all such powerhouses and such inspirations. And then maybe if you guys, Chitty, maybe for the Hawk Media team, if they can share links to the podcast that all these ladies are running to tune into more of this kind of content, that would be huge. And I would
definitely.
love to